Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to episode number 7, I believe. Is that right, Raj?
8.
8? Number
Yeah.
8. But yeah, it's been it's the most exciting time ever in terms of AI and the rate of and the pace of improvements and releases is just insane. Yeah, so there's so many exciting things that have happened. We're just going to try and touch on a little bit of them from a bunch of different areas. So today we're going to go through a few different topics. So we're going to go through Nvidia Foundation. They're giving them organizations the ability to train their own large language models, Adobe Firefly and their licensed text to image generation. Openai ChatGPT has released plugins. What we think's coming down the line. There is some updates to some tools that we've found useful, such as N8N, Langflow, and we've been playing around with some of the new ChatGPT plugins, such as chat retrieval, so we can do a little bit of a demo of how that works and what we've been able to get working so far.
It's all just been in the last week. So just keep that in mind. We just do a weekly episode, and we should probably be doing every 2 a week at least to just keep up with the news.
You could do daily.
Yeah, there's a plethora of other announcements from GitHubCopilotX. We've got Canva with a heap of stuff as well. So there's so much stuff. We focus on things that we can program and interact with ourselves on this channel, but it's probably worthwhile touching on some of these things because it does reach a much broader audience who will be impacted by these tools. Yeah, great. Do you want me to maybe start off with the news with some of these big announcements that have come out, and then we can go into a demonstration of some cool stuff towards the end?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Last week was huge for AI, and of course, some of the biggest announcements were the ChatGPT plugins, and that's probably the one that a lot of people are excited about. I can't demonstrate it to you at the moment because I personally don't have an account, have access to that feature yet. I think it's still considered alpha. Yeah, but they have basically releasing a way for developers to build their plugins, and they've even got going to be hosting a contest inviting developers to create innovative applications using the plugin integration. But this is seeming going to be the avenue for the multimodal integration, so you can upload images and it can describe the images and things like that as well. And it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. But essentially, there's going to be Figma integrations, Zapier integrations. There's a whole lot of integrations with Wolfram Math as well. So
I guess we should back up and say what the plugins do. So the plugins are going to give internet functionality to ChatGPT. So you'll be able to ask it, for example, to schedule a meeting, and it will be able to make a call to actually do that. So it will be able to actually send an email or actually add an event to your calendar or whatever. Of course, you'll have to authenticate that plugin and give it access to your calendar or something like that. But I've actually been playing around with my business coach AI thing that I'm doing manually, and I've been able to get it actually, or ChatGPT, to actually use tools as well. So I've been able to. The other day, I was chatting with ChatGPT, and I said, "Can you help me with these tasks?" I said, "What should I focus on? Can you help me with these tasks?" And I said, "Can you do that?" And it was like, "Yep, I'll schedule these meetings for you. I'll contact these people. I'll do that." And then I had to stop it. I had to be like, "How are you going to do that? You don't have access to the internet." And that's, "No, I don't, but I'll tell you, and then you can copy and paste the text across." So it kind of, so it's definitely
it's like
in
it's
there.
ready to do it.
It's ready to do it for sure.
Yeah. So that's really cool. The next bit of news is coming from Nvidia Foundation, and they announced a huge heap of partnerships basically to bring AI to every industry. This coincides with the launch of their H100 GPU, which is offering about 10 times faster speed to train models. So this basically means organizations are going to be able to train their own large language models at either a fraction of the cost or a lot faster, and enabled you to have large training data set to train in something 10 times bigger to train in the same time as some of the data sets that have been happening at the moment. Not to mention just simply fine-tuning models, which is a cheaper way to train a model as well. So that's going to be really interesting to see. I think they released what's called their Nvidia Picasso, which is their visual language model making service that enables customers to build generative AI models trained on their specific licensed or proprietary content privately. And that's, of course, going to use the H100 GPU clusters that they're setting up. It's like kind of a cloud infrastructure as a service type system. Actually, it may even be more like a platform as a service. So you have a little bit more control. You have less control over the creating the actual infrastructure and servers and stuff that you need, but you basically choose one and then you use NVIDIA Picasso to train the model. So it gives you a user interface to train models, which is going to be super interesting to see how that evolves and how it gets used in the enterprise. The other big thing was GitHub CopilotX, which is something that I wasn't so sure was going to be useful, but then when you watch some of the things, because I've just been using ChatGPT mostly, and it's
Actually, if you remember in our last meeting, we actually talked about this. We actually talked about the need for something to load. We need some tool to load the context of our programming IDE into ChatGPT, because I found that I was trying to solve a problem that would touch maybe 5 or 6 files. Like I'd be trying to figure out a deployment issue, and it would touch like the Docker file. It would touch the, I don't know, Nginx configuration. It would touch the, you know, SSL generation or whatever. And so I needed to copy and paste all these files in. But once I'd done that, then it was able to give me much more useful answers, including like making changes to multiple files at once, or if I had a bug, it would be able to say like where the interaction is between the two files that's causing the issue. And so I think that basically GitHub Copilot X is going to help us to do that. So rather than copying and pasting the information to different places, it's all going to be there. And I can imagine that they're gonna bring stuff like that we were already doing last week, but manually into VS Code. So, for example, staging up all of the files for your commit and then having it write a commit summary for you of what actually the files do. Like, that's going to be
that's going to be
great.
game changing, and that's right. In the last episode, we're talking about specific use cases that we were using and discovering time. And then to summarize, what will be released in Copilot X is they're basically going to be offering a more personalized developer experience by adopting OpenAI's GPT-4 model and introducing chat and voice interfaces as well. So there's going to be GitHub Copilot Chat, which is deeply integrated with Visual Studio and will provide in-depth analysis, explanations, and bug fixes, while Hub Copilot Voice will allow developers to give natural language prompts verbally. So yeah, that might be interesting to see the interesting use cases of that. There's going to be Yep.
I can testament to that as well, because I actually wrote a script that lets me input text into any text field. So that's how I've been interacting sometimes with it. Just got too much to be writing all this text as prompts. So I've been speaking the text, and sometimes it didn't get all the grammar and whatever correct, but because it's a large language model, it could figure out what I meant from just like an unstructured kind of string of words. And so, yeah, being able to do that it's going to be great as a developer to be able to use all these tools. It's going to make things much more productive.
And I think one really good thing which we touched on last episode was using this to create your commit messages or pull request messages, AI generated descriptions and tags, and maybe even to make better tests for insufficient test coverage. So that's going to be really cool. And so that means your commits, if you're committing frequently, they're going to be, instead of just one line quickly describing exactly what you did, you could actually go into greater detail quite quickly, which is going to be super helpful for collaboration and teams, and also being able to create documentation super fast. Yeah, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I'm on the wait list, but I'm on a few wait lists at the moment for this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know when things are rolling out.
I just thought I'd just touch on this because we're all about creating content as well. A lot of our YouTube videos are edited by AI. We use text to speech, we use Whisper, we use speech to text, we use GPT, and a range of reasons to actually edit and find useful parts of the videos, to create variations of the videos for shorts and subclips. We write descriptions, meta tags. One of the news articles that came out is about Adobe Firefly, and I just thought I'd mention that because that's a new text to image based content creation tool, which is trained on licensed media, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of licensed photos to create text to image, whereas Stable Diffusion stuff technically wasn't licensed. It wasn't trained on the licensed area, and there's a court case going on about that. So this is Adobe's equivalent to Stable Diffusion, but it's trained on high quality, high fidelity images. So that's going to be released soon, which I think is going to be quite transformative for particularly large media organizations and movie production and photography companies. And then likewise, Canva has created a range of AI tools that they've been in the pipeline for a while, everything from generating text to image to even slicing and automatically dynamically assigning. They've got video editing capabilities now, so you can assign video tracks to certain scenes and cuts in the videos with AI. So they've released a lot of that stuff out already. they had a big announcement last week, and they just released like 9 tools in one one sitting, which was just crazy. Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on the content creation side because we're very interested in that as well. Even though that's not a development tool per se, we quite interested in using tools to automate things. We often look at those types of tools and go, okay, how can we do it without using those tools? Because using those tools for us is a manual process, which takes time. But if we can fully automate it with Python code and API integrations, then that's something that we look into because it's great to be able to automate the full process. Yeah.
Yep.
So I think that's probably it for the news for now. And we could probably move on to something a little bit more engaging and show some demonstrations.
I'm generating an image for us using the Canva thing live, so let's see how that goes.
Yeah, cool.
Here we go. So this is 2 guys doing a YouTube thing.
2 guys doing a YouTube thing. Of course, they've got beards.
In watercolor style. Yeah.
Yep.
We've since shaved our beards off, but there you go. There's a few examples of that working in Canva right now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And of course, Canva, they're all about super usability, keeping the UI sleek and simple. And lately, I've noticed their platform's got a decent boost in speed too. So it's very responsive and nice compared to some of the competitors.
Yeah, so this is going to be great for anyone doing anything creative. Here's some more. These were, I think, I can't
More
remember what I
realistic
picked.
ones.
Photorealistic ones, yeah.
Yep.
There's a few issues there, but
Yeah, but that's well known if they're using Stable Diffusion. I'm not sure what they're using in the back end. They might have their own trained
I mean,
model.
to be clear, running Stable Diffusion is not rocket science, but yeah, maybe they've done some tweaks to it. Yeah, it's cool to see that integrated into a product. I guess that's where everything's heading. They're deploying it and making it usable.
Yeah.
Was there the ability to do videos or something you said as well?
Oh, yes. Okay, that's the other bit of news. Sorry. Runway ML is a video editing suite. They have announced their Gen 2, which isn't out yet, but it's basically text to video, which will be pretty game changing, be pretty powerful. There is already a lot of talk from Facebook and stuff like that about text to video. But the interesting thing is here, Gen 1, if you go to the research tab on their website, yeah, oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's pretty much it there. But Gen 1 was to be able to give it an image, give it a video, and it will create a new video based on some text. But you always needed, it was video to video. Now Gen 2 is able to just create the video from scratch, so you don't need that source image. So yeah, and it's just only been getting better apparently, so that maybe they've been using some of the outputs to improve the fidelity and the quality of the accuracy of the videos.
Slow-mo any video.
Yeah, so they've got a heap of other AI tools to help slow-mo, and they do interpolation for different frames and stuff like that to basically increase the frame rate of the image. You've got automatic background removal, green screen. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, that's cool. Now, what was this one at the top here? This is like Gen 1 video. So the
Gen 2, if you go to research tab,
okay,
and go to that article. They've got a video on it. You can watch it. I don't know if the audio will come through.
It's nice to have all the visuals up for the readers or watchers. Yeah, so this looks pretty cool.
And so this whole page spells it out. You can pretty much create whole worlds. So you can see the difference between the launch model and current model, how it's improved.
Yeah, it's going to be, I got really into watching those YouTube videos of like upscaled, restored videos from the 1800s or whatever, from those early cameras. And they're pretty cool as well. Yeah, being able to,
impressive.
With these sorts of algorithms, and I think even the founder of Nvidia said that recently. He said that we're not far away from all pixels being generated rather than rendered.
Yeah.
So yeah, very interesting.
That's pretty epic. So I think this is pretty pioneering what they're doing, and yeah, it's only going to get better. And I guess that kind of leads to the future of what's going to probably come out in the next few weeks or months, but I think probably its timeline's a lot closer than we initially thought. But I would say some of the big things that would be seeing is text to video, definitely more text to video tools and capabilities coming out, more multimodal capabilities, so reading images, reading videos, and the large language model being able to interpret that information based on the pixel data, which is pretty incredible. Some serious machine vision going on. And then maybe that, when I say multimodal, that could actually lead to singular sort of large language models being able to do it all. So being able to input images and videos or PDFs and being able to output images, videos, and PDFs. Imagine that. There you got one language model that does all. Then, of course, with these plugins, we're going to start seeing these digital large language models being able to actually do stuff useful themselves with the plugins. One other thing that I just wanted to touch on was text to 3D models. So I think that's an area of research. There are a few tools out there now that do this at a premium, but I think that's going to become simpler,
Yeah,
easier.
from what I understood, that was a solved problem as well. I think I had someone talking about it during the week, and they said that there really hasn't been much focus on that, but it's really not, it's a solved problem in terms of being able to do it. Yeah, so I think
Yeah,
that,
and you can do it. You can take a stable diffusion picture and then put it into another platform and generate a sort of a wired mesh, another platform to generate the images and the textures, and then bring it all together in, say, Blender or Unreal Engine or something like that to create a model. And then you can take that model and then put it into another platform to do the framing so you can move and interact with that model. But I'm thinking that there's going to be one tool that is able to do all of that in one hit, which I think would be good. Already those tools speeded up that process significantly. But yeah, and of course, there's already tools where you can create models from camera footage. Say if you walked around a car and you can then create a 3D mesh of that car, but then making that car usable in a 3D environment is also challenging. Yep.
I'm just going back to the Nvidia, the GGX H100s. I pulled up the data sheet for it. Have you seen how much power these things draw? It's 12 kilowatts.
Wow.
Or
That's
11.3
great.
kilo, and that's just one, I'm assuming, that's sitting in a rack. So this whole rack could potentially be, am I wrong? It could be using 100 kilowatts. So
Yeah.
10, like assuming there's 10 in each rack and there's 10 racks, you're using 1 megawatt of
That's
power.
insane. I don't know, unless that means per rack. That's the other. But
Yeah, a lot of power. That is a crazy amount of power. Anyway, very interesting.
oh, look, that says it says GPU 8 times Nvidia H100.
Okay,
That's
that's
the
for
cool. So
8 of
that
them.
could have been 8 of them. Yeah.
I assume that's one of them. So maybe one rack
Yep.
or one, yeah,
640 bytes of memory.
yeah.
Oh,
It's like
sorry,
cool.
gigabytes. That's
Cool
insane.
processors, 112 cores. I think the real thing, from my understanding, is the InfiniBand like networking capabilities. This
Yeah.
InfiniBand. I have
Yep.
some 40 gigabit InfiniBand cards sitting here that I'm waiting to put in the home lab, but
And that's
um,
400, is it?
that's 10.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I guess
tenfold.
that's the current enterprise best thing, and so I was able to pick up the one tenth the speed. Most people are still using 1 gigabit
Yeah.
at home. So yeah, 40 times that, but still
Do you
10
have to
times
change your
slower
whole
than what they're
network
using.
over?
The InfiniBand is really more for connections just between.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, effectively you do.
Yeah.
Effectively you do. But all I'm going to do them, because I don't have a router, and so I was going to use a star. Is it a star? A star configuration. So each InfiniBand card has 2 ports, so that can go to 2 machines. I have 3 machines, 3 servers set up in the home lab, and so yeah, that's how I can do. So each one can go to the other 2. So that way I
Yeah.
don't need a networking card, don't need
Cool.
a switch. Cool. Yeah, so that's some pretty cool stuff. But one thing that I wanted to go over was a tool that I learned about, Langchain.
Langflow.
Langflow, yeah, sorry. So here's the UI for Langchain, if anyone's seen that. So it's a visual way to drag and drop Langchain blocks or components together. I haven't played a lot with Langchain yet, but it's coming down the pipeline. It's something that it's just too good not to play around with. It has a lot of things out of the box that, or Langchain does anyway, that are just going to make it so easy to do stuff. For example, one of the projects we're working on, we needed to have a vector data store set up. And so the options were to set up our own, to use Langchain because it already has the backend bindings and stuff there, pretty much the exact same time we were doing this, OpenAI released their plugins. One of their plugins is a chat retrieval plugin. I think this is really interesting because during the week I was watching some I'm going to give you 5 videos at the end of this as well that you have to watch that I've watched through the week, which I've just found fascinating. And I'll give you my takeaways on them as well. So one of the things that I noticed was that OpenAI's chief scientist, Leah, sorry if I'm butchering your name, buddy. So he talks in this interview about how data is not a problem. There is still more data there. And it coincided with the release of this. So I don't know if OpenAI is doing this or not. I have no idea. But it would make perfect sense to me that the way this chat retrieval plugin works is you can set it up and it's got a data store. And so you can get it to ingest your content and turn that knowledge into numbers. And the numbers, however similar the numbers are to each other, the distance between them is like the difference between the meaning of those. So if you're talking about cars and what you did on the weekend, they're totally unrelated topics. But if you were talking about Toyotas and Fords, they would be closer together. The distance measure of those would be closer together. And so using a vector storage engine and turning your knowledge into vectors, you can semantically, they call it semantic is a big word for meaning. You can mathematically determine how close the meaning of one thing is to another based on some maths. And OpenAI is going to leverage this to be able to pull knowledge that it doesn't have. Like it's only been trained on everything publicly that's available on the internet. It doesn't have information about your private knowledge or private internal information that you might have in your company. And so one of the things you can do is you can digitize and vectorize that information. And then when you ask a question to ChatGPT, you can have it include the context about whatever the topic is. So if it was a particular client that you're writing an email to, you might want to pull out like the recent interactions with that client and pass that in as context. Hey, ChatGPT, write an email to client X about a project A. And here is the last 5 email communications we've had with them. Or here is the summary of the last meeting we had on Tuesday with them. So this will give us the ability to do that. And I'll give you a bit of a demo of that in a minute. The thing is that I'm a bit divided because in order for this to work, it's using something in order to turn the text in your private company into vector, it's using OpenAI's text embedding ADA 002, and the data is sent there. Now, when I run these scripts, there is some steps that will stop personally identifiable information from being sent there. However, anything that is sent there presumably is going through OpenAI's servers, and that's a third party, right? So you need to be mindful of that. The other thing is, even to detect if it has personally identifiable information, it's actually also going to another OpenAI endpoint. So the data is going out there. So if we want to run this for our company and really we want our data to not leave the site, then I think we need to amend this as a community with some other ways to do these things. For example, instead of using a cloud-based tool for embedding, we could use some other metric. We could use a large language model like NeoX6 billion or something to calculate the similarity locally, put that into a vector store, and then when we're sending the information to OpenAI, we can still pull out the relevant information, almost as good, but we're only sending the relevant information. At that point, it could be further redacted before it's sent to do inference on to help you write an email or whatever it might be. Yeah, so I think that's very interesting. The other thing, yeah, so I'll run you through a little demo of that if you like. Would you like to see that, Rog?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, cool.
So you can download this and you can run it locally from
Yeah,
their GitHub repository.
you can.
Yep.
And I've done this earlier today. Actually, I did this week. I ran into a few issues. It is a new project, so there's a few issues in the pull requests, which is where I got stuck. But yeah, essentially there's 2 components to this. There's the web server, which is basically a microservice that connects to the data store. So we have a data store, which is storing your information, and we have a web application, which is creating API endpoints to retrieve and send that information. And so there's different data stores that you can choose. There's Pinecone, which is a cloud-based one. I'm not familiar with this one. Zil is a cloud-based version of Milvus. So I went
Yeah.
with Milvus. I've used Redis before, but Redis is more of it can do vector. There's plugins to make it do vector similarity search. And so there's a couple of things here when you're picking a backend. If you want to search for some text and you want an exact text match, vector search engines won't necessarily do that because your information is turned into like a number which represents its meaning in vector space, in numbers. It loses the actual keywords there. And so if you want to do a vector search where you find the meaning similarity, the vectors and backends are good. Some of these vector backends, they provide both, or a hybrid approach of exact keyword matches and vector similarity search. So anyway, that just to give a little background. But I wanted to run this one because I could run it locally and it was new to me, and it just required setting up Docker container, Docker compose up/d. So that's running. The web application is running, and the web application, if you access it, I'll pull up that for you quickly. Let me see if I can just find, I think, docs maybe.
Can't see anything at the moment.
I'm just getting the URL up for you. Yeah, so once it's up and running, you get, if you access here, you can see the query endpoint, and you can pass in and filter via this kind of information. And so what I've done earlier today is I've set up something, and now I'm just going to run that same query.
This is on Postman, and now we're going to run a query.
And I think it might be useful to to give an example. All right, so this is a question I might want to ask. I might want to, I'm going to write an email. I'm just going to start a new chain here. I'm going to use GPT. We'll use this because it's a bit faster. So write a summary of what you know about Hamid. Okay. It's probably not going to provide any information about him.
Working at Postman at the moment.
Okay, here we go. Oh. Okay, we'll just leave it like that. Actually, here we go. Yeah, so it's not going to know much information about this. So if I was to say, write an email to Hamid about his interests or something, it's not going to know much about it at all. But if I take this, and what we want to do is we want to find a question to go and search in the retrieval backend. What we can actually do is, as a precursor to answering this, we can, now this could be a much longer instruction, right? I've just written a very contrived, simple instruction, but it could be a much longer one. And so we would ask ChatGPT, so given the following task, a question that exemplifies the core meaning for to be used for information and populate to help with the task. So sorry for my bad typing, and there we go. So what we'll do is, what is the status of Hemids? Can you give me the first? So what we're trying to do is basically get it to write a small bit of text that is something like information about Hamid, right? So that would be the kind of the response that I would want to get for this task, but it didn't quite give me that. All right, so we won't hold that against it. But then if we switch over to Postman and we try and do this search, okay? So initially I've done a search here for something rather contrived. So this is the example content. This is an example. So I've loaded up the example files here. I can run this and I can get, I've searched in this case for files that have a reference to this is an example. So we have this is an example PowerPoint, this is an example, and these are the files which I ingested this morning that are part of the example, okay?
Yep.
And so they're all similar, but I could change this word to test. So I can now run this, and I get this is a test, obviously very similar, but yeah, it is quite fast. Everything is in memory, so it's
yeah,
it's pretty fast. This is an example markdown document. This document does not mention the word test at all, but semantically, example and test are not that far away from each other. Like they're similar concepts, and so it's able to say this is useful information, right? Now, if we were to say information about Hamid, or we just put in Hamid here, and we submit that, we can then see we get a whole heap of segments. So what the ingestion does is it takes the files and it breaks them up into segments and then calculates the meaning of each of those segments. And so we can see there's a bunch of results here. In this case, there's 5. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy that raw information and I'm going to paste that over here back into our window. And then we can go something like this. We don't need this anymore. But what we would do is we would say something like content, and we would paste in that information, and then it's going to be able to write contextually relevant information because it knows who he is and what his role is, that he has a back-end development shop, and we would like to explore the possibility of partnering with your development shop for this project. If you're interested, please let me know. We can discuss further the details, okay? So that's just from, and the way that plugin is going to work is it's going to do this automatically. So there'll be we need to figure out these intermediate queries. So if you're giving ChatGPT a task to write an essay on what's happened in your company yesterday, it's going to need to then go and get that information somehow, right? So it's going to need to figure out what query. So that's kind of the bit that we need to figure out.
Yeah, and so the plugin will enable you to integrate with ChatGPT to like a local running data store.
I think this is intended to be deployed somewhere on the ChatGPT is going to need access to this, right?
Yeah.
And so it's going to have to be on, I don't know exactly how it's going to work. Theoretically, you should be able to run it in JavaScript and inject it into the thing locally. But what they want you to do with these ChatGPT things is they want you to have it exposed with a well-known like file. Let me see if I can just well-known. There's like well-known here. And so there's like an API definition here. And so this is going to be used to retrieve the information. And so you could, for example, use this ChatGPT to get information for users. Say you're a SaaS company and you want to give, like you're a CRM SaaS company, and you want to give your users the ability to pull information about their contacts directly into ChatGPT. Then you could have an authentication where they give permission to ChatGPT to get the information and inject it in. And so that's what this is going to be used for. But what we're planning to use it for is as our viewers know, we're building a white label front end for these chat-based systems that have a lot of bells and whistles already included. So if you want to build a GPT-based mobile application or web application, we already have a lot of the building blocks for that. And so this is what we're going to be using for that. So we'll be using either this or something similar to this. And so when people are using our white label app, say for example, which I should bring up, right? So if you come in here and you check out the products that we've got at the moment, this will be launching pretty shortly. And so this will be able to pull out information from past conversations or about interesting other topics. But the other thing is that we have this white label solution where you can take something similar and we'll be able to like inject this knowledge from past conversations into to help solve problems, to help answer questions with more relevance, with more proprietary information. Does that make sense?
That's awesome.
So that's what we've been
Yeah,
tweaking away
so
on.
hopefully that for some of the viewers, that's going to start sparking some curiosity on how they can build their own custom data store to call. And that way, the good thing about this is it gets the token limitations of some of these models. So if you have, say, GPT-4, which was it 8,192 tokens, I think?
Something like that.
Or 96, I can't remember. And if look, I've already hit it a few times, you hit the limit of how much context you can give it and how big the conversation can be, and eventually it ends. If you can put all the context on a different data store and it's retrieving it on demand per query, you're optimizing the token allowance.
Yeah. So then you're not just recursively summarizing the information and it's getting more and more compressed. Yes, you might do that. You might keep the first message, like the system message. You might compress the conversation recursively, but then you might also have space to retrieve information related to the last one or two messages in the conversation. And so you're also adding that in. And so I think setting up these systems is really important. It's going to become, it may not be evident yet, but there's going to be such massive productivity gains from having these systems in place. It will be like the equivalent of having a phone line in a business or having a website. Like you will just have a knowledge base of information that you can query, and it knows about your company, the people who have come and gone in the past, the clients that have come and gone in the past, the experiences, and it's able to draw on that information. And as these AI models get better, having that data store there is going to be the difference between the companies that succeed and the companies that don't. Imagine not having a website. You won't be able to be as effective. There are already studies coming out showing that developers are twice as productivity. I shouldn't say exact numbers because I can't recall, but the exact figures, but something like 30
significant
to
significant improvement in
they're being
productivity
and performing at higher quality as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's something to be excited about. So yeah, we're happy to help anyone that's interested in solving that problem and getting on board early with this. But this is just the rate of progress it just cannot be understated. It is a snowball rolling downhill. Like it is accelerating at an accelerating pace, and we're seeing that every day now. Like stories of developers being able to roll out like 5 microservices in a day, whereas previously it would have taken 2 weeks. So you're just going to see things accelerate like
Yeah.
wouldn't believe. So
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable. And I think on that note, we probably sum up the video, episode 8.
yeah, I would just want to run through these 5 videos that I promised people.
Oh, yes, of
Yeah,
course.
there was one more thing I wanted to touch on. So like I mentioned Langchain previously,
On
Langflow,
this.
I think it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, where it was, here it is. Another alternative to this that we've been using is N8N, and there's been a plugin added for OpenAI here, and so I'm sure you can see it too well, but
So
here's a couple
N8,
of
just so people know, N8N is kind of a Zapier equivalent, but you can self-host it if you want. They do have a managed version as well, but it's just a bit more configurable than what some people prefer this platform.
yeah, and I would say this is the old way of doing it now because it's still
Yeah.
great and it's still, but we're manually defining the workflows that we want here. Whereas I think the next evolution will be the workflows themselves being mapped out for us. So
Mm.
here we can map out the workflow, like when someone fills out the contact form, we want to write a customized thank you email to them, send it to them, and then we want to write a summary of whatever they asked and send it to the director or whatever, validate their information, enrich it, and then send it to the CRM. So we can set up all that process manually here. And that's what I think it's called node automation, node 8 automation or something like that. Because it's a few different examples here that you can go and check out on one of the, this is an example that I pulled from one of the example workflows. And it's just showing the different ways that you can use ChatGPT in here. So that's worth checking out. And onto the 5 videos. So a big plug to Cold Fusion. He does a really good job at summarizing the rate of evolution of AI and how this is just picking up speed. And so this is a mash of all the different news items, some of them which we've covered today. But this is in a nice presentable kind of format that you can give to your colleagues that's not super technical. I would say. So that's number 1. Ilya Sitzgevir, he's done an interview here with, I think I'm not quite finished watching it yet, but it is a very interesting interview. So I think basically from what I can figure out, they're going down the path of, they're going to get more data and they're going to, continue the development at this kind of aggressive pace. The reason they're doing the retrieval stuff, from what I can glean, is to get more information, to get more data to improve the model. But that's just my reading between the lines. And here's another video. If you do like this one, I suggest watching this one, which is a couple of weeks old, where he goes in and talks about what's to be expected in the future. Lex Friedman did a really great interview with Sam Altman, OpenAI's CEO, and most of Lex's videos I would highly recommend to watch if you're into technology. It's just finding the time, but they are great. And AGI within 18 months. So Dave Shapiro here, not as big as some of the other YouTube channels, but he does go into some of the reasons that he thinks we could have AGI within 18 months. And I think it's quite interesting because essentially once we get AGI, everything else becomes once you have an AI that can solve all the problems and continue to evolve on its own and at an accelerating pace with hardware, those Nvidia
Yeah, those
GPU,
H100s.
it's going to be pretty crazy. Another sentiment I just wanted to share with people is that this generation of kids is going to be the first generation that grows up with talking computers, and
Mm.
this is going to be normal. Like Star Trek, like these things that we've seen, like the kids are going to grow up. My daughter's 2 is going to grow up, and she's going to wonder why we use keyboards. Like she's going to be talking to a computer as if it was a human, and it will be foreign to her. Like having those CRT monitors sitting on the desk in the 90s or 80s or whatever. That seems strange to us,
Yeah.
but that's going to be, the fact that we
Yeah.
didn't have phones. Like,
A really good meme that I found. I'm just scrolling through my LinkedIn feed now, but it was basically, it had this picture of all of the humans on their phones consuming content in a hurry at a train station or something. But then on the side are these baby robots who are just furiously reading. So it's while we're consuming and distracted, these robots are learning everything it is possible about the human race and with all this information going in. So that kind of is implying that it was just a great sort of meme, I think maybe created with AI as well, implying that while we're all distracted and doing busy work just to survive, they're meanwhile gaining so much knowledge and wisdom beyond that of a single human can contain. That's soon. Yeah, who knows what that's going to lead to.
Yeah, you get we've got text. Wait till we get multimodal large language models that have read and watched everything and seen every picture. It's going to be pretty next level.
Yeah, and can then execute code or integrate with services or
Yeah, I mean, I think probably going with the text-based route is probably the best, because they're going to be able to add the ability to do, if everything's accelerating at an accelerating pace, then adding other modes and everything is almost a solved problem. It's just a matter of iterating using the tools now, and because we're doing it at an increasing pace, it's maybe not as far away as it was previously.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, tune in next week, everyone. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
I hope you
see what will change.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the show. And yeah, do reach out to us at AI Kingdom if you have a project in mind. We'd love to hear from you.
Yep, great. Thanks, guys. See ya.